What are cryptocurrencies?
Hey, hey, hey.
What are NFTs?
A non-fungible token.
Time to buy Bitcoin.
Bitcoin just seems like a scam.
What's up? Bitcoin!
Hello everyone, welcome back to On The Ledger. This is your host Moel Sayed, and I'm back once again on your weekly rendezvous from Paris. It's safe to assume that half the world, maybe you too, first heard about cryptocurrencies and blockchains in 2017. And as an obvious result, the demand for cryptocurrency saw an incredible rise. But then everyone realized that existing blockchains were not quite ready for the party to start yet, let alone being prepared for the hundreds of millions of people that were to join in the next 4 years. So what happened? Research, experimentations, and implementations to make blockchains more scalable, decentralized, and of course, secure. Elrond is one such project that was developed in 2017 to meet the rising demand of blockchains and solve frictions related to transaction speed and gas fees. With its currency, EGLD, the project is ready right in time for Web3 prime time. And you know what else is ready in time? EGLD's ledger integration. Yes, you heard that right. The Elrond community is now able to manage EGLD directly from within the security of their hardware device. To discuss this, we're pleased to have Beniamin Mincu, founder and CEO of Elrond Network. We'll be joined by a man that you probably know. He's a regular on the podcast, but we haven't seen him in a while. The giga-brain behind our integrations, Fabrice Dotria, Ledger's head of platform. Beniamin, Fabrice, welcome to On The Ledger. How's everything going?
Hello guys, really great to be here and have this conversation, so really great to connect.
Thank you, Mo, for inviting me again. Great to be here and super pleased to discuss with Beniamin today.
Yeah, I'm actually quite excited about this, so let's jump right into it. On The Ledger Season 2, Ledger meets Elrond. Here we go. Let's start from the beginning. Beniamin, Elrond actually, like we said in the introduction, was born in 2017. To solve certain frictions that were already, quite present in the ecosystem back then. Could you maybe talk to us a little bit more about the Elrond story and explain the project to someone who has probably never heard of it?
Sure. So the core idea with Elrond goes a bit to my history in the blockchain space. Namely, I've been in the space for a long time together with my brother. First of all, I've been part of the NEM core team in 2014. Then together with my brother, we essentially had a fund through which we invested in the most relevant and what we thought were the most important architectures at that time. And this was 2016 and 2017. And it became clear to us that despite this interesting market that was developing, the core problems that we've discovered were actually not addressed in a meaningful or compelling way. And more specifically, the two key problems that we've discovered that had to be addressed in order for us to see a widespread global adoption of blockchain technology were first, a transition from dial-up to broadband. So a very significant improvement in scalability that would enable people to essentially transfer at the scale and speed and cost of the internet, any type of assets. And second of all, a huge UX simplification similar to that of the browser moment in the early internet days. So with this insights in mind, after maybe seeing everything that was being built in the space, being up to date with the entire academic literature and the different approaches, and seeing that the solution was nowhere near to coming to fruition, we've essentially gathered a team with which we can literally build rockets and started working on Elrond. So here's where we are today with the network live, able to scale probably better and in a more compelling way than any other architecture in the space. And so I'm happy to dive even deeper, but I still believe that the core fundamental obstacles that we need to address are, one, transition from dial-up to broadband in terms of blockchain performance, and second, a huge paradigm shift in UX simplification. This is why Elrond exists, and our goal is to onboard the next billion people in the space. Because if we can do this, then everyone will get to play a different kind of game, whether it's partners like Ledger and so forth, or all the other partners that we have. We really believe that things could change significantly.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And you've actually managed to build a rocket, and it's called EGLD, and it's now available in Ledger Live. So, Fabrice, maybe you could tell us what that means from a UX standpoint for the community.
Yeah, sure. Maybe if we just take a step back and see what happened in terms of timeline. Uh, we started working with the Elrond team quite a while ago, I think. I can't remember the exact date, but it's probably like 2018, 19 maybe. And the first thing they did is they designed the application that is running on the hardware wallet. And at the time, that was only one application, simple one. And then they made it compatible with the web wallet that is out there. If I'm correct, wallet.elrond.com. At least this one works, but maybe there are others I'm not aware of. And basically, what you could do at the time is manage your assets directly through this web app using your Ledger device. Now, the next step, and it's an obvious step for us, and I hope it's becoming more and more obvious for many people in this industry, it was to bring the EGLD token directly within Ledger Live. The reason why for us it's important is because we have the same objective as Beniamin. We also want to improve the UX and bring crypto to I would say normal users, to my sister, for instance. That's really what's driving us day to day, and we believe we can do a great job with Ledger Live. That's not to say that the Elrond team is making a bad job, because if you look at what they do with MyR, for instance, it's an amazing job. But the reason why we think also Ledger Live is interesting is because we provide two things that are fairly important, in our opinion. Self-custody, you're self-custodying your assets, and you have multiple blockchains. So by adding EGLD to this bucket of blockchains that are already supported, we are creating this hub where basically you can manage all the crypto you want from a single place. And on top of that, we will add many other features like the ability to buy tokens or swap them. And maybe we can talk later about this, but there are more incoming. Right now, you can only send and receive EGLD tokens, but I know the Elrond team is already working on the next steps. And maybe just one more thing to add, because it's not obvious in the way you said it, Mo, but yes, EGLD is integrated in Ledger Live, but actually the Elrond team did it. That's really the point here. It's really important to remember. Ledger was here for guidance, for assistance, but the entire work was performed by the Elrond team, by Lucien and all the engineers behind him. So really, I'm super pleased to be discussing with you today, because it's the first integration that was entirely made by another team. And so for us, Ledger, it's the next step that we are showing in the way we want to work with the ecosystem. It's opening the door of Ledger Live to any crypto project. So super happy to have you on board, guys, and we'll talk about the future improvements coming, I hope, in the next questions.
Yeah, I would say a few things. So we've had a lot of conversation with you guys, and I remember us just pushing here and there, like looking for any way we could just to interact, to find a way to integrate things and so forth. And I remember Lucian's discussions with the team and so forth, and the fact that one really proactive way would be to really move forward and develop everything, because then we would make everything even simpler and the conversation could go a lot smoother and so forth. So it's awesome to see what you guys are doing in terms of hardware wallets and so forth. And I cannot overstate how difficult it is to actually build something that doesn't break 100 times a day, especially when it comes to storing your wealth, especially when it comes to a hardware wallet. So great stuff on that. keep pushing. A great milestone for your community and our community, and definitely looking forward to all the steps that are coming. Our engineering team is always hungry and willing to push new standards. So quite excited and happy about that.
I love that, and I feel like now that we have the infrastructure and the protocols that are becoming more scalable, and at the same time we have the hardware that enables people to access these technologies, we're reaching a new phase in the world of blockchain and crypto. And you use this term internet scale blockchain a lot, Benjamin. What does it mean to have an internet scale blockchain?
The core idea here is this: you basically can immediately understand that with 7 or 15 transactions per second, you could never have global adoption, right? There's absolutely no way that you could see this type of throughput being able to accommodate global usage. So it's almost that whenever you use global transaction throughput and then 7 or 15 transactions per second, it's almost like you're intentionally taking an idea to the absurd, right? Because it's so obvious. But this is the state we're in. And I would say that it's really great that we've made these steps, that without Bitcoin, without Ethereum and so forth, we would probably not be here. We would not have these conversations and so forth. But then if you think about it, in order to really see widespread adoption in terms of, let's say, a large, significant part of the global population using this technology, whether it's just crypto, whether it's stable coins, whether it's NFTs and so forth, you need at least tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of transactions per second to be able to accommodate this and start making the scalability problem literally irrelevant. Because after that point, you can really focus on what you actually want to build and not on the performance, the missing or large fees and so forth. So at the end of the day, with Elrond, we wanted to scale beyond 10,000 transactions per second. But given that we've built the architecture on adaptive state sharding and secure proof of stake, which are two fundamental technologies, we can actually scale beyond hundreds of thousands of transactions per second in a very, very energy effective way. And we're now even carbon neutral at this point, especially for people looking at that angle and so forth. So I do think there's no way of shortcutting this. However you look at things, you need scalability, and everything we've seen in the ecosystem is just a reflection of that. What happens when you don't have scalability and you need to overpay, create other things, different shortcuts, but at the end of the day, you're just going in circles until you can solve the core problem. And this has been our focus, and we're quite excited because everything that Ethereum wanted to build in Ethereum 2.0, we've actually solved and published since the beginning of 2018. Mid 2018, we actually had the prototype running, and Elrond was the first architecture to demonstrate that you can really build adaptive state sharding and secure proof of stake and move them from theory to practice. So yeah, quite excited about all of this.
It's a very interesting point what you're saying, because it's a shift in paradigm if you think of it. Because most people were using, cryptocurrencies as a store of value, but now that you have the scalability, it could, start being used as a medium of exchange in a lot of different contexts. Fabrice, from a hardware standpoint, what does this change for Ledger when you think of it?
It changes some things, and some other things I think remain the same, because I would say the core value proposition is still to be the owner of your wealth. You are in control. Having a secure hardware wallet, owning basically your seed, your 24 words, is still the basis. It's the foundation on which we all believe in this, and that's why this industry exists, basically. Um, so the hardware wallet and the security of the seed will remain super relevant in the future. I'm convinced about this. Now, if it's not just to store value, and basically it's not just to hodl for several years, then the hardware wallet will need to adapt in many different ways. I think first of all, if you need to use it every day, you will want you will want more convenience. Maybe you will want easy access to basically just tap and pay, and not having to connect, reconnect, enter a pin, and do crazy things like this that takes time. um, Maybe you want to have some threshold on your transaction. After a while, I want to be able to enter my pin, but for a certain amount, maybe I don't want this. So yes, in the future, and I'm not saying now, but in the future, things will need to evolve. I know at Ledger we're thinking about all this and wondering what could be the next steps. Um, but on a purely technical level, these new protocols, they offer many more ways to interact. It's not just send, coins now. It's manage tokens. It's minting NFTs. It's a lot of many different operations. It's staking also for Elrond specifically. And all of these operation types, they have an impact on the hardware wallet behind them, because you need to be able to process these transactions. And so for Elrond right now, we don't have such problems, but who knows? Maybe in the future it will become more and more complex, and the transaction times will become, really, really complicated to handle. And having security in the hardware wallet that we have today, we are limited in terms of memory. Many of our users are complaining about this. That's why we're also launching a new device to increase the memory and to provide better options. So my answer would be hardware will need to evolve, both in terms of performance, in terms of usage and convenience. But I really believe it's here to stay, because at the end, you still want to secure your assets in the best way possible, and you don't want to give ownership to someone else. That's really what we're all about.
100%. And I already use my hardware wallet every day, so it's not like it's a shift for me, but I do understand that there are a lot of frictions to that with the current, way things are being designed and how everything is evolving. And Benjamin, let me jump back to, the conversation that we were having around, everyone being one of the main layer ones at the moment. But what we're seeing now is the fact that most L1s are starting to be positioned differently. So you have certain use cases that are more prominent on, other layer ones than others. How are you thinking about this? Like, what's your take on it? Do you think that each L1 will have its own kind of value proposition and its own ecosystem when it comes to, certain functionalities and certain, technologies being developed on them? Or do you think that most of them will have wide variety of different ecosystems and things being built on them?
I would say that it's almost like if you zoom out enough, you will see three phases. There's always the bootstrapping phase, the intermediary phase, and let's say the end state. The bootstrapping phase is pretty obvious. Everyone will push hard to just deliver the architecture, make sure things are live, they're stable, that they can scale, and so forth. The intermediary state, I do believe that we're going to see almost all use cases played out on almost all networks. Just because from a pragmatic standpoint, let's say we have very fundamental insight ourselves, people will discover this, they'll try it out, and technology is at this point open source. The moat is very much built around the community, and some of these use cases that will probably bootstrap things slowly to a different scale. But in the end state, I would say that we're probably going to see some very large, I mean, orders of magnitude larger adoption on some core verticals in a way that was literally unforeseen. And what I mean by this is we're very much at first looking at things in a very zero sum perspective. Like everyone is trying to fight everyone. Everyone is just trying to steal a few users from the other people and so forth. But the key insight here is that we're at the end of the day not playing a zero-sum game. This is a very, very early inception of a market that will probably reshape everything we know about finance and well beyond finance. So, given that we have around 200 million users at this point in the entire ecosystem, and that we're almost 8 billion people, you have some key parameters to give you the playing field of what really needs to be done, where the elephant really is. And with Elrond, this is why we're focusing on onboarding the next billion people, because we believe that this will be the critical threshold at which everything changes, at which the crypto market will become the default market, and the traditional market will very much look like TVs look today. I mean, some people still watch TVs, but when you have the internet, it almost looks like it's too boring, too inflexible, and too inefficient to really get entertained, even, and so forth. So there are use cases. There are super exciting things like the ones we're seeing right now with DeFi, with NFTs, with DAOs. But if you look at them, they're not refined yet. They're not just yet at the point where you're convinced that tomorrow they're going to explode. The great part is that they're right before the point. So you could discover that you wake up and something has literally penetrated the mainstream and has changed everything. This is why we're pushing super hard at Elrond to unveil a few things. And once we move in on a certain vertical, we like to do it in a decisive way, not merely being present, but once it's there, you should see it very clearly where the end conclusion is.
I love how you're thinking about this, and it's very transparent because most people would answer, "Yeah, we're going to be everywhere." Do you have an idea of what that vertical might be in the future?
Sure. So I do believe very specifically that DeFi is, once you grasp the idea correctly, something that is already inevitable. I mean, if you think about what's the difference about between fintech and DeFi, it's precisely that fintech is essentially the UX part, just front end improvements that you've had over time, but in the back end, you're still using 30-year-old technology. And it's almost like imagining sending an email where after you send the text, someone takes the horse and drives to the next town and delivers the message. That would be literally insane. But banking is sort of working like that on mainframes and COBOLs and super old software. So it's only um, become possible right now that beyond the UX, which is of course very important, and this is what, for instance, Revolut has done, and this is why we believe Maiar will be extremely important there. You also need the automatization of the entire process, the core digital element of making these transfers possible. And when you can scale globally, enable transfers globally, enable super inexpensive transfers, and then do it anywhere in the world with a very simple UX, this is a building block. There's absolutely no discussion around that. You can discuss about 10,000 other use cases, and there are some that are really big, like NFTs, for instance, because we've usually been discussing a lot about finance, and finance is great. This is the first, largest, and probably most obvious application, but the most potent one, the most probably subversive one, and the one that I do believe will, in a very surprising way, drive this to mainstream incredibly effectively, is the NFT revolution. Just because here you have magicians that are telling a new story. It's not about, like, when someone tells you about money, some people love money, some people hate money. You don't really want to get into that. Crypto might, especially at first, seem a bit like uncomfortable and so forth. But art, I mean, art, who doesn't love art? And so if you have the digital art and artists that could not make ends meet until yesterday, for the first time becoming millionaires, expressing these ideas and so forth, then you'll have a kind of cultural revolution in the making right there. The premises are there. Let's say the fields are prepared. You have diesel, gasoline everywhere, and the fire is just about to ignite. So I wonder what will happen.
Yeah, you said a lot of interesting things there, but what I take away from that is the common thread here is adoption through the vector of user experience and culturally relevant use cases, and that is actually what 2021 has kind of put in motion. And speaking of that, what we've been doing at Ledger as well with Fabrice and the whole team is really transitioning from becoming solely about security to becoming a platform. And we've also integrated NFT related functionalities. Fabrice, could you speak more about that, and how does becoming a platform differ from solely being about hardware security? What are the kind of future milestones there, and how are you thinking about that platform being built?
I think the good way to see it is, before we were a security company providing hardware security and software UX and convenience. Now we still are and we remain a security company. That's our core value. But we would like to provide tools to others so that they can build things. And basically, it relates to what you were discussing around communities. To me, having Elrond in Ledger Live, made by them, is exactly the point. It's not about Ledger making everything. First of all, because we won't be able to do everything ourselves, and second of all, because we don't know who the next big winner will be, or big winners, because I think there will be plural. By opening our technical stack to others, we give them an option, if they want to basically join Ledger, but they can do it. It's a la carte. You choose your option. You want to be in Ledger Live, you can. You just want to add Ledger support on a web app, you can. You just want to add Ledger NanoX Bluetooth support on your mobile app, it's possible as well. You don't want Ledger? Well, sorry for your loss. It's probably a bad idea, but everything is possible. And on top of that, we, as you know, Mo, we also have this new way of integrating services, like on ramps and DeFi services. So to me, this platform switch is really about providing tools, guidelines, and I would like them to be as simple and frictionless as possible, so that everyone in the crypto industry can basically use Ledger as a brick to basically build their next project. So that's what the platform is about. Now, very pragmatically, what it means for Ledger Live users is they will have new blockchains, they will have probably new features, new services, and stuff like that. So it's always good for our Ledger users, but I think it's more important than that. It's really about giving options to anyone in our industry to provide security for the next crypto revolution. I was discussing with Charles a few days earlier. Charles is our CTO, and we were discussing about the fact that people may decide to use centralized services to manage their assets, and this is fairly depressing, because if that's the case, then this revolution is just bullshit. So it's fairly important that Ledger can be an alternative where basically anyone can be owning their own asset and being their own custodian. That's really what's driving us. So yes, it's about Ledger Live, of course, for us, but it's more than that. It's really about security for the entire crypto industry. Sorry if it looks like too big, but I really believe it's important. All of these services that have Ledger support right now, including Mayar and others, this is the founding zone to me. It's really what's the most important part. We provide security to the industry.
And it's really anchored, in the ethos of what, Web3 is all about. What we call Web3 now, which is basically, blockchain technology. It's digital sovereignty and being digitally sovereign. Owning your own keys, owning your own assets, and the future being able to own your own contracts and being able to mint your assets on these contracts when we talk about NFTs specifically. But talking about assets, the past few months have been crazy for EGLD. The coin hit an all-time high in November, and it seems to be set for an interesting year ahead. Why do you think that is? There are so many things happening in your ecosystem, so I just want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I think we can make 2022 the best year yet, and this is what we're going to attempt. We're going to, of course, push on different threads that we believe will open floodgates in this ecosystem, in this community. And those key ideas are basically one, having the Mar decks open and permissionless to the community so that everyone can not only start a project but then get it listed, get the community around it, get liquidity, and be able to go from the idea to the point where it's already liquid and already building the ecosystem and so forth. Secondly, I do believe that we're now at a kind of inflection point with respect to the tools on Elrond. So, of course, we're going to have a marathon like no other in terms of building. Just kickstarting and taking the ethos that the Elrond team has had and some of the community members that have already launched a lot of interesting projects, take it massive into the community, because we've seen some really great projects already launching, whether it's NFT marketplaces, whether it's DEXs that are preparing to launch right now, or other tools within the ecosystem. I do believe that 2022 will be the day, the year of the builders, the contributors, whether it's developers, NFT creators, artists, or businesses from around the world. This will be their time. And beyond the, let's say, DeFi thread, beyond the NFT thread that I believe has just started in Elrond, although we've seen a lot of projects and we've seen a lot of community members and even really cool marketplaces. We're barely scratching the surface, and it will be an avalanche and a kind of super wave that will lead on something that we call the Roaring 20s. So it's just a start of a few years that will seem incredible when you look at them, but it's going to be like that only because we're pushing so hard to make this happen together as an industry and as a project and so forth. So I could not be more excited about all of this.
I love that. I'm loving that whole, positivity. It's great, and I think the space is just about to start being in the bull phase that we call, not from a financial perspective but from a technological advancement. Fabrice, maybe you could tell us about what excites you most about the future.
About the future, so I was late on the NFT trend, very late. So now with the current market, I think I have some time and I can now finally look into this. No, I kind of agree with what Beniamin said, and I think Mo, you are very into this as well. But the next big revolution will probably be around culture, and not especially DeFi. DeFi is still very complex to understand for many users, but you can address way more people through culture in all sense of the way, through communities and through engagement and feeling part of something. So this is something I would really study in the future. But what this new trend around DAO And very differently, payment is something I can see. Beniamin was talking about trust, about payment, about merchants. I totally agree. At some points, you cannot have mainstream adoption if it's not already somehow compatible with the legacy world. So we'll see. There will be a bridge or bridges to allow people to pay in crypto more and more. By the way, the ledger card at some point will go out. And really, guys, I was not telling this I was not talking about payment for that, but I just realized we are also following this trend, but it will be something big. So to me, DAO, very new, very, very early, very tricky, and sometimes maybe a bit dangerous. Payments, it's really merging the old and the new world. So I would have a strong look at payment in the future, I would say.
I'll add something to both of your lists that I haven't mentioned: blockchain gaming and play to earn. I think this will be huge in the next year to come. So before we tie this off, I'd like to ask you one question. If you had, or if you could, change one thing about the Web3 space, what would it be?
This is super interesting in a few senses. So, on the one hand, we can really change a lot of things about Web3, yeah, and it's just starting out. And we're specifically thinking about the things that I was mentioning before. But I do, let's say, if you were to boil down everything to one fundamental aspect, it seems like there are three core problems that one way or another will have to address. And the level of creativity and resourcefulness that will go into addressing these three problems will probably define the speed at which we're going to see the billion users that we've discussed about. Those three problems are, of course, on the one hand, fundamental performance of blockchain architecture. It's why we're focusing a lot of energy on that. Second, and probably the most, let's say, the largest conversation will become UX by far. I mean, once you've solved scalability, there's absolutely nothing more impactful, more, let's say, capable of enabling you to speak the language of the average user, the simple user, the one that could really increase the market by orders of magnitude. But then I also think there's a third element, and then I'll boil down to the one part, and this is legal obstacles. It very much depends on us, on how we, let's say, find ways to frame things in a way where this is not a war, where when a war, we don't need a war, right? I believe a lot of energy has been lost during the last 10 years because of very, let's say, stupid framings, where people fought wars for just for the gist of it. I could be a maximalist, like destroy. I don't want the state. I don't want banks. I don't want anything. But if you really want to see the adoption, at the end of the day, it's, can we offer something fundamentally better to the user wherever he is in the world? Then governments, then banks, then everyone else will need or will have to want the same. And this will be the end goal. So these are the three things that will probably see different responses, iteration to. But if you would change one thing that can change everything, it's UX. If you abstract away complexity of private keys, public keys, if you can basically make defaults very simple, if you can create this idea of progressive security, so that a user that has $1 or doesn't have anything should not go to the security that one with $1 million has to go, then you're starting to see what the user really sees. So very, very curious to hear Fabrice's thoughts on this, but I definitely see that UX will be the most critical challenge and the largest potential adoption multiplier.
Very interesting. Fabahis, tell us what you think.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and at the same time, it's not. I'm not worried or scared about exactly this thing, but you'll see how we are definitely aligned on this. UX is definitely important. Scalability is super important. Well, let's say performance. Once you have performance in UX, it's done. It's easy. You can onboard everyone, and there is a very very easy path to get there. Like just do Web two. Web two works. So my biggest fear is that on this path to go to Web three, we just forget about the reason why we built it in the first place. So this is what scares me right now about Web three, because everyone is talking about it, but I would say the hardcore old gang people that were, the maxes of the past, are right in a way. If we forget about ownership, about self sovereignty, about owning your data, well, if we forget about this, let's just use Web two. It has already solved all the problems we're talking about today. So yeah, my fear is that we just forget about this while we are transitioning to Web three. I'm hopeful. I mean, I hope, and I'm convinced some people will yell and cry and make a lot of noise if we go in the wrong direction. But I also believe it's fairly easy to fool ourselves and just get along with the new projects and new stuff without wondering if we are really solving something. So that's my biggest fear. But I'm confident. So I remain hopeful.
No, don't fear that.
One element that I believe summarizes the let's say symbiosis between what we both said is that at its best, Web3 will feel like Web2 in interaction, and will have the fundamental building blocks and new optionalities of like owning your data, owning your assets, doing all of that in a way that seems effortless. If we can do this, this is actually the challenge. The users will always want this if it's simple enough. If it's not simple enough, it means we have to push a few more iterations until we find the great soft spot between like the goals, values, and so forth, and what the user can really bear and really pay for.
Well, I guess that's the perfect way to end it. Beniamin, Fabrice, I mean, super inspiring conversation. Great to have you. And yeah, we'll chat soon again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, guys. Really great conversation.
Thank you, Mo.
That's it. A super interesting conversation with Beniamin, Mincu, and Fabrice Dotria. If you're an EGLD holder, head over to Ledger Live right now, where you'll be able to manage your precious coins from within the security of your Ledger device. This was On the Ledger from Paris with your host Moul Sayed. Till next time, take care. Au revoir. This content is provided for informational purposes only and is the sole expression of our opinion, and should not be relied upon as legal, business, investment, or tax advice. Do your own research. Any loss or profit is your sole responsibility. Stay safe.